doing fine. Good to see you. Thank you. Yeah. You know him.
Found it though, you guys found it.
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of His voice is so sweet. The birds hush their singing, and the melody that He gave to me within my heart is ringing, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. I'd stay in the garden with Him, though the night around me is falling, but He bids me woe through the voice of woe. The voice to me is calling, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
Amen.
Great job, sir.
Thank you, that was wonderful. Okay?
Little one.
Okay?
Yep.
You actually have to hold it, Jim. Okay, thank you, that was wonderful, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. We need some help.
Now? Okay. I will enter the technology soon. Thank you, Al, that was wonderful. And on behalf of the Comer family, Fletcher family, the sons, Alphonse, Bettye, Todd, and Jeffrey, I'd like to say welcome to everybody here and to say thank you for coming. And to this program of remembrance for our beloved friend, mother, and wife, Bettye Fletcher Comer. And that's a wonderful picture. But thank you for coming and welcome. This is the second of 3 programs in honoring the life of Bettye Fletcher Comer. The first was in New London, and now Martha's Vineyard, and a third in New Haven in the fall. And again, we wanted to do this because she had 3 adult life and career bases. And we wanted, again, all of our friends, her friends, in all of these bases to have a chance to honor her life and her spirit. So again, I say thank you, and a special thanks to all the people who helped to organize this day, but especially to Mickey Jennings and Donna Johnson, who did so much in pulling everybody together. And I just want to say thank you very much for that. And I again ask Reverend Streets to take over and go on with the program, and I'll come back again at the end. Thank you.
For the purpose of the recording, we are asking people as they come forward to please state their names. I'm Jerry Streets, a friend of the family of Fletcher Comer and senior pastor of the Dixwell Congregational Church in New Haven and former chaplain of Yale University. All of our participants in today's program understand that in order for the possibility of what you say to be remembered, that it need not be everlasting. Also, during our time together, the staff here is going to share some refreshments with you as we move along, so don't be startled by their coming amongst you and sharing what has been prepared for you. From both Jewish and Christian traditions. At the rising of the sun and its going down, would you say with me, we will remember Bettye. At the rising of the sun and its going down,
We will remember Bettye.
At the blowing of the wind and the chill of winter, we will
remember Bettye.
At the opening of the buds and the rebirth of spring,
We will remember Bettye.
at the blueness of the skies and the warm summer weather,
We will remember Bettye.
at the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn,
We will remember Bettye.
at the beginning of the year and when it ends.
We will remember Bettye.
As long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength,
We will remember Bettye.
when we are lost and sick at heart,
We will remember Bettye.
when we have joy to share,
We will remember Bettye.
when we have decisions that can be difficult to make,
We will remember Bettye.
when we have achievements based upon her.
We will remember Bettye.
As long as we live, she too will live, for she is a part of us. We will remember Bettye. The rabbis say to us that a broken heart is at its wholeness. That the wholeness of our hearts are mostly deeply felt when we grieve such losses as we are celebrating and remembering today. So from the Christian tradition, please join me in the prayer that our Lord has taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory forever. Amen.
Before anybody beats me to it, I'm going to pledge $100 to fix this microphone. It's my pleasure to read the first reading from the Old Testament, the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Good afternoon. My name is Gail Myatt, and I had the blessing, the joy, the opportunity to serve with Bettye through the friendship and the membership of being in the New Haven chapter of the Links Incorporated. So quite a blessing for me to share this time with her. I also now have the blessing and the opportunity to share with each of you on her behalf, as I will read as noted in the program from 1 Thessalonians, the 4th chapter, verses 13 through 18. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind, who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage each other with these words. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Comer, and I will be reading the obituary. Dr. Bettye Fletcher Comer, 84, of North Haven and Waterford, Connecticut, passed away peacefully on June 2nd, surrounded by her family. Bettye was married to Dr. James P. Comer, MD, Maurice Falk Professor in the Yale Child Study Center, and Associate Dean of Student Affairs at the Yale School of Medicine. Bettye was a member of numerous organizations committed to volunteer service and social engagement, among them the New Haven chapter of the Lynx, of which she was a past president. Born in rural Wadesboro, North Carolina on July 19, 1937, Bettye moved with her mother and grandmother to New London in 1950. She graduated from New London High School and received her Bachelor of Science degree from Central Connecticut State University. She went on to earn a master's degree in education from Eastern Connecticut State University and her 6th-year diploma in professional education from the University of Connecticut. In 1995, she earned a doctorate in education from Columbia University. Bettye spent most of her educational career in leadership positions in the Connecticut public school system. She became New London's first black principal in 1973 when she assumed the leadership of the Naumec School. She later served as principal of Winthrop School in New London. Bettye closed out her career in public education in the Stamford school system, where she was first a principal and later a central office administrator until her retirement in 1996. After retirement, Bettye continued her work in education and community development through service on several nonprofit boards in Connecticut and New York. The board positions include trustee of Mitchell College in New London, trustee of the New London, Connecticut Development Corporation, and trustee of the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut, where she established an educational scholarship fund in 1996. In New York, she was previously a director of the Fletcher Foundation, a member of the Teachers Advisory Board of the New School for Social Research, a member of the New York State Regents Task Force Subcommittee, a trustee of the Theater Development Fund, and a trustee of the Bank Street College of Education. Bettye was also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Rotary International, the National Council of Negro Women, past president, and the NAACP. In recognition of her work in education, Bettye received numerous honors and distinctions. They include the Distinguished Alumni Award from the Neg School of Education of the University of Connecticut, the President's Award of Merit from Connecticut College, and both the President's Medal and an honorary doctorate from the Bank Street College of Education. She was a member of the honorary educational organizations Phi Delta Kappa and Delta Kappa Gamma. Bettye was preceded in death by her parents, Clarence Jones and Ruth Edwards, and her stepfather, Boss Willie Edwards, and siblings Tyler and Elizabeth. She was also predeceased by the late Alphonse Fletcher Sr., 1990, whom she married on June 27, 1964. She is survived by Dr. James P. Comer, sons Alphonse Jr., Todd, and Jeffrey Fletcher, granddaughter Matilda Fletcher, nephews Samuel, Herman, and Larry Smith, niece Janet Robinson, and stepchildren Brian Comer and Dawn Jefferson. Bettye leaves cousins Ingrid Downs, Sherry Allen, and Carolyn Scott, step-grandchildren Nicole and Natalie Jefferson and Brian Comer II, as well as a host of devoted nieces and nephews on the Fletcher side. A public ceremony celebrating the life of Dr. Bettye Fletcher Comer will be announced at a later date. Thank you.
When peace like a river ascended my way, Satan should buffet, though trials will come, let this blessed assurance control that Christ hath regarded my helpless estate and hath shed his blood for my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my faith shall be sight, the clouds be rolled back as a scroll, the trump shall resound and blood shall descend, and even so it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, hallelujah, with my soul. It is well. It is well with my
Dr. Comer, should we take up an offering right quick? Those who are listed now to come with remarks, we invite you to please do so. And as you notice, the staff is also sharing some refreshments with you as we proceed with our program. So those listed, would you come in the order so indicated, and make sure you say your name for our recording. Thank you. Let's give Gates honorary microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Betty Baker. One of the most precious gifts of summering on Martha's Vineyard are the friends I've made that bring me back year after year in anticipation of seeing them again. There are those who possess such sincerity, such genuineness, and ease in conversation that forms an immediate connection. That was Betty. She is the only person I have met who spelled her name the same as I. E. We were both AKAs and links. I had met Jim while a student in the doctoral program at Columbia. His work was part of our studies. I could hardly have anticipated that I would see him nearly 10 years later and would have had the pleasure of meeting Bettye. I first met her at Della Brown Hardman's home shortly after we moved here in '97. How well I remember Della introducing us and sitting us on the couch chatting as new Washer Shores. Della loved bringing people together, and she could not have introduced me to a more delightful person. I can say unequivocally that it was Bettye and people like her who make the island like no other. People that you don't see most of the year, but they remain in your memory until you see them again. It was Bettye's welcoming spirit that I remember, but most of all, it was that beautiful smile. The topics that we discussed, we had similar backgrounds, both educationally and professionally. The topics that we discussed were not those. Conversations were about family and service and what was happening in our lives. I recall she and Jim coming to the house with friends one evening after an affair, and the relaxed conversation that just flowed. We talked about where we grew up and simple stories of childhood and our families. I also recall the pride and joy she expressed at the reception at Shera Cottage honoring her son, Jeffrey Fletcher, who wrote the screenplay for the film Precious. Mother, wife, educator, foundation director, trustee. But to me, she represents friendship in its finest form. Her beautiful spirit and gentleness remain in my memory, and I will miss my friend.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Constance Bettye, and I would like to read to you excerpts from a letter I wrote to Dr. James Comer when I learned of Bettye's passing. Dear Jim, please know that you have my deepest sympathy at the loss of my good friend, Bettye. I remember the first time I met Bettye. We were attending the parents' luncheon for the Harvard freshman class in 1983. Bettye and I knew at that point we could be friends. While my daughter Alicia and Buddy, Bettye's son, were friendly, Bettye and I decided that regardless of our offspring, we would be friends, and so it was. I had many fun-filled and meaning experiences with Bettye and her family. I remember the first time Bettye and her family came to visit us on Long Island. My husband Buford, who loved to cook and entertain, planned a dinner for 6 p.m. Now you have to remember this was before cell phones and Google Maps. And our house on Long Island was somewhat isolated. Well, Bettye and her family got lost trying to find our house, as many people did. Meanwhile, around 11 p.m., Buford and I gave up and went to bed. But Bettye was determined. and the family arrived just before midnight. All of us had a grand time and a great dinner in the middle of the night. We chuckled about that through the years. I also remember Bettye inviting me to her glorious birthday party for one of her significant birthdays. It was on the end of Long Island, and I was on the vineyard. So I explained to Bettye that it would be problematic for me to travel to her affair. Bettye hired a private plane for me and others to fly to the party. Jim, I believe you were on the plane. And what an event that was. I was so grateful that Bettye arranged for me to be there. I attended an affair at Bettye's house in Waterford. It was filled with local dignitaries and many other people who expressed admiration and love for Bettye. I expressed my observation of the scene and mentioned to Bettye that she must be very proud. Bettye looked at me and quietly said, "You know how it is. I am the principal." Bettye was determined and self-assured. Bettye attended my daughter's wedding. Many of the guests were young friends of the bride and groom. When the bride threw her bouquet over her shoulder, which was aimed at her single friends, Bettye enthusiastically caught the bouquet. This added much joy and humor to the ceremony. We captured the event on camera, and several years later we showed the movie to Bettye, and we all reminisced about the glorious wedding and the bouquet toss. Of course, Jim, I remember all the pre-wedding activities and events at your lovely wedding that you and Bettye shared here on Martha's Vineyard. Bettye was very happy that you entered into her life. I also remember you, Jim, dancing and doing your thing at the wedding. You seemed to be having great fun. Jim, we shared many good times with Bettye, your children, my children, and our grandchildren on my porch and at your home. I remember one time when I brought my grandson, who at the time was young, to your house, and you took him out on your boat. Ian still talks about that time. It was just you and him that went boating. I believe that Bettye enjoyed an exciting, rich, and very successful life. And Jim, you were the source of much happiness for Bettye. I wish you can keep good memories of Bettye and hope that those memories are a comfort to you. Now I have to get off.
Hello all, I'm Shirley Hall, and I'm so honored to participate in this celebration of the life of Bettye Fletcher, a strong, determined, and worldly woman. That's how I remember Bettye. We all recognize and can read her many accomplishments. She was clearly a leader in her profession. I was never a professional colleague or part of her workaday activity. I knew her when she was at leisure, just having fun. We met many years ago on this beautiful island, and she struck me as a sophisticated lady with purpose. I knew her when she and Jim Comer were courting, and while we were in our prime, socializing with numerous folks who gathered on the island. She and Jim soon tied the knot. How significant is it to sit on the porch, on the vineyard, having cocktails, sharing stories, and just sitting in a rocking chair while reading a good book? Well, Bettye and Jim did the ultimate. They married on the porch at Harborview Hotel, and it was pure joy to witness the ceremony. What a beautiful and memorable day as they were on the path to making new memories. I knew Bettye as a devoted mom and became acquainted with her son Jeffrey, who was working on an important project. He was young and focused, a time for heightened hanging out for his age. But I learned that while Jeffrey might go out for a minute, he was devoted to going in early to work on his project. Well, we know how proud Bettye was when Jeffrey completed writing the screenplay Precious, and how she was filled with joy when he won an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. What a defining moment and validation of Bettye's great parenting. As the millennial approached, my husband and I hosted a party during the summer of 1999. It was held at an ideal setting overlooking the gorgeous Nantucket Sound. Bettye and Jim were among our guests, and I believe it was the next year that Bettye asked me how the site might be acquired for an event her son, Buddy, was planning to recognize high achievers. I think you were one of those, Skip. The venue she wanted was not available, but we did locate another site that was awesome and perfect for a night of merriment. Bettye was enormously proud of Buddy and enjoyed serving as a director on his Fletcher Foundation board. Bettye and I met as mature women. The girlish giggles were behind us, and there was no need to talk about apparel we might wear to an event. Bettye was stylish and confident in her appearance. But one day, our conversation led to a trip she was planning to take abroad for a special event and the need to wear the perfect hat. I wondered why the need for a hat, and why was she so concerned with wearing the perfect hat. What I learned was the reason for her trip was indeed special and required attention to detail. She was invited to a high-profile wedding outside of Berlin, Germany, for a descendant of the last emperor of Prussia, Kaiser Wilhelm II. Enter another son, Todd, who was living in Germany and a friend of that descendant, Prince George Frederick, who was to wed Princess Sophie Johanna Maria of Eisenberg. Todd was the reason for his mom's special invitation, and she was excited in anticipation of such a marvelous opportunity. Why wouldn't Girl Talk include appearance as she prepared to witness royalty become united? I was not clear on whether wearing a hat was required or whether Bettye was following her awareness of protocol making sure her appearance was attractive and correct. She was ecstatic about the event, and I was happy for her. She found the perfect hat and pulled it all together as she prepared to take off. Upon her return home, she shared the highlights of the spectacular wedding, and all went well. I'd say Jeffrey, Buddy, and Todd made her proud and recognized her invaluable contribution. Speaking of Betty's appearance, she was always impeccably dressed, no matter what the occasion. A familiar cliche comes to mind when describing this amazing woman, that certain people have a way about them that makes them shine. Betty had that certain something, a glow. She was kind, she was thoughtful, always dignified, and leaves an impressive legacy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Thelma Hart Johnson. I remember Betty in a number of ways, and I decided I would do 3 little snippets that I thought were very meaningful. I watched the Academy Awards in 2010 with great anticipation because Jeffrey Fletcher had been nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay for Precious. Betty had shared that she was attending. And of course, I was delighted when the roving camera found her and she was smiling so bright. You could, now, you know, the awards hadn't been given. But Betty was just, it was kind of like she says, wow, I'm here. But she was just smiling so beautifully. Well, it happened. Jeffrey received an Oscar, and he was the first African American to win an Oscar for screenwriting. Then several years ago, there was a group of us who would call ourselves New Haven Friends, and we used to celebrate New Year's Eve together. We had decades of fun doing so. Betty and Jim were a part of the group. For decades after that event, Elle and I hosted a New Year's Day feast, and I'm going to tell you what we had. We had collard greens, candied yams, neck bones, ham, chitterlings, turkey, potato salad, macaroni and cheese, Hopping John, and for you who do not know Hopping John, that's rice with black-eyed peas, and just plain black-eyed peas, string beans, cornbread, sweet potato pie, cherry pie, apple pie, mincemeat pie, pound cake, and bread pudding with bourbon sauce. That generally was the annual New Year's Day celebration, and we invited a lot of people. But at that juncture, Betty and Jim were not on our guest list. I knew them, but they just didn't get invited. But Curtis Patton, a mutual friend of ours, shared with Betty and told her what we served at the feast. And on one New Year's Day, just as dinner was about to be served, I received a call from Betty. And it went something like this: girl, I know Jim and I are not on your list, but Curtis told me about all that food that you served. So Jim is on his way to pick up some meals for us. make sure you put lots of Tiflins and collard greens on my plate. I like potato salad and yam and cornbread and sweet potato pie. Now, you can add anything else you think I might like. Jim doesn't eat chitlins, so he'll tell you what he wants when he gets there. Now you gotta love directness, and Betty was direct. And that just endeared our friendship even more because she said, oh girl, I felt comfortable doing that. I know you wouldn't mind. I said, thank you, Betty. Betty and her son Buddy hosted a birthday party for Jim here in the vineyard several years ago, and many of us from Connecticut were invited. At this event, Roberta Flack was the guest musician. At the party, Betty introduced Roberta as her BFF. We met and chatted with Roberta and Betty. Somehow we got around to the New Year's Day event, and Betty delighted in telling Roberta that I knew how to cook chitlins and collard greens real well. We live in Naples, so when Roberta came to what is now called the Naples Artiste, we went to a performance. After the show, we decided to go backstage to say hello to Roberta. We hope to get her attention by telling the backstage monitor who decides who will and who will not get to see people who are performers, to tell Roberta that her BFF's chitlin and collard green cooking friend wanted to say hello to her. No luck, by the time we got backstage, Roberta was gone. But we had fun sharing that story with Betty. And she said, you know what, you shouldn't be telling all my business. Anyway, Jim and family, remember, those we have held in our arms for a little while, we hold in our hearts forever. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes before you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. May God bless you now and forever. Thank you.
What time is dinner?
Yeah.
It's about 2 hours. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Annette Streets. And there's so much that I could say in remembrance of Betty. However, I've been asked to share a remembrance from our circle of friends. The circle is simply an intergenerational group of women who are each other's friends. We care for and support each other. We laugh, cry, and pray together, but mostly we laugh together. COVID restrictions were difficult for us because we love to get together and share a meal, laugh, drink, talk. And after quarantine was lifted, Nikki and Gigi Jennings were kind enough to host a luncheon for us. It was private and celebratory. What we didn't know was that that was the last time that the circle would get together with them. And so as a remembrance, I want to share a portion of that special gathering of the circle with you. I was asked to prepare an opening prayer for the luncheon. And as I thought about who we are and what was happening around us, I gained inspiration from one of my favorite poems as I formulated my prayer. It is the Merger Prayer, or the Merger Poem by Judy Chicago. And I'm going to share it with you now as I shared with our circle before my prayer. The Merger Poem by Judy Chicago. And then all that has divided us will merge. And then compassion will be wedded to power. And then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind. And then both men and women will be gentle, and then both women and men will be strong. And then no person will be subject to another's will. And then all will be rich and free and varied. And then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many. And then all will share equally in earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish the young. And then all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again. And as we held hands around that table, I prayed. And this prayer was personal to us, but I don't think that the circle would mind if I shared with you. And I don't think that Betty would mind either. So I prayed. Gracious God, creator of Eden, we stand before you coming from different faiths and beliefs, but we all stand under the beautiful umbrella of your love for us. We are so grateful for Ramona's warm laughter, which encourages us to cherish life and all its creatures. For Barbara's truth-telling that empowers us in situations which are sometimes harsh and unkind. For Betty's wisdom and insight, which has helped us to be compassionate in tense moments. For Mickey's kindness and thoughtfulness, which inspires us to be gentle. For Carolyn's resoluteness and tenacity, which inspires us to be strong. For Keisha's poetic creativity, which leaves our imaginations rich and free and varied. For Gigi's competence, that inspires us to live a harmonious life oriented towards Eden. For Pat's faithfulness and her witness that reminds us of the importance of caring for the sick, the weak, and the old, and to nourish the young. And for Patsy, who is a gentle soul and dear to us. She reminds us that no matter what circumstances confront us, our friendship continues to be a support to one another. Creator God, continue to keep us under this beautiful umbrella of your love for us. We pray. Amen.
Amen.
Our circle misses our friend, and we grieve her passing. But we're comforted because we know what a sterling woman she was. And therefore we have every confidence that she now rests in peace with God. And to that I say once again, amen.
Amen.
Good afternoon, all. Richard and Kathy Taylor for the record. And Thelma, that's tater salad. Kathy and I want to again express our condolences to the Comer and Fletcher families on the loss of our dear friend Betty. But if there was ever an example of a life well lived, it can certainly be said of Betty. The Comers and the Taylors met through our dear mutual friends, Ron and Judy Davenport, and I'm so glad that they are here. We met so many people so many wonderful events over the years with them. Kathy and Betty immediately found common ground in family, the significance of the vineyard as a comfort zone for people of all backgrounds to enjoy, the pride in particular of legacy and history of African American families. Jim and I were two Yale and Harvard tag-alongs who were blessed to be married to women who, while a bit understated publicly, were strong-willed, very discerning, and understood people and institutions, and believed that life should not be coincidental. Along these lines, Betty noted to Kathy that she had only one granddaughter, Maddie, and Kathy only had one grandson, Tyler, both the exact same age, and the two of them agreed that offspring of elite families need to keep our culture and values in the circle. So for those of you who think you saw something new on the Netflix blockbuster Bridgerton, where marriageable youth of nobility and gentry are launched in society, think again. Betty had a beat by a mile. They have nothing on her at all. And so at the time of this planned marriage, both Maddie and Tyler were 6 years of age. Today they are 15. Stay tuned. As we know, Betty was enormously proud of her 3 sons. And their successes were not by accident or chance, but by steering, guiding, and encouraging strategically. As some have mentioned, in 2009, Jeffrey became the first African American to win an Oscar for screenwriting, Best Adapted Screenplay for Pressure. Kathy and Betty were frantically texting back and forth on the night of the Oscars, even while Betty was in attendance at the show. She was jumping for joy, literally coming through the telephone as the announcement was made. At the time, Kathy was organizing events, as some of you recall, at Sherrill Cottage for the education travel company Road Scholar. So Betty and Kathy encouraged Jeffrey to come to the vineyard, share his journey from Harvard to the Tisch School to Hollywood. Jeffrey made a significant impact on vineyard history by doing a talkback at historic Sherrill Cottage, where Roland Hayes, Paul Robeson, Harry Burley, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., and so many of us have stayed and participated in making history. And finally, we have all been inspired when Betty and our dear friend Skip Gates hosted several Fletcher Foundation fellow announcements that supported brilliant scholars in civil rights, education, and environmental activities. The last time we saw Jim and Betty together was last summer at the dedication of the Union Chapel organ by famed organist Alice Crisp from Wesleyan University. Both have been faithful to UC over the years. Betty will be missed by me and Kathy, but she has left an indelible mark on all of us. Indeed, a life well lived, a determined will, and a great story for the great migration of many people. Thanks very much. I didn't know you did chili. We got to talk about that.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jennifer Smith-Turner, and honored to be here. Jim, good to see you. So we were neighbors of Betty and Jim's in Sedgwick, Kentucky, which is where we met them. And I had the great honor to have Jim attend one of my book readings at Yale New Haven Bookstore in the early 2000s, so I also knew they were poetry lovers. If I have to think of one word to describe Betty is elegant. She was absolutely elegant in her appearance, in her gestures, in her wit, her knowledge. And it was always an honor for Eric and I to spend time with the two of them, because we knew that when we were with them that we were going to be educated, we were going to be schooled, we were going to learn things that we didn't know because they lived lives that we had never seen or experienced ourselves. And so it was always an honor to be in their presence. What I'd like to do is share 2 poems, given the fact I know they were both poetry lovers, about what it is to have loss. And the first one is called My Reflection. When you closed your eyes that final time, I lost more than the heart that beat in tune with mine. more than the ear that understood my voice, no matter the tone. When your eyes closed, I lost a mirror reflection of your me I will never see again. And the other poem I'll share is called Memory, and I wrote this poem, my mother passed away in 2000. And shortly after that I wrote this poem, and it gives me great comfort, and I hope for Jim and your family it will give you comfort as well. And it's called Memory. Somewhere in the recesses of my mind, somewhere behind my eyelids late at night, somewhere in my soul, you are there with me. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lois White, and this is my husband, George White. I'd like to tell you about the first time I met Betty and the last time I was with Betty. Several years ago, Jim was a regular attendee at some of the dinner gatherings that we had at our home, and he would always come alone. This one time, he called a few days ahead of time and asked if he could bring someone. Know who, know why, know what. But you know the light bulb went off in my head. And being the courteous hostess, I said, of course you can bring someone. And when he arrived, he came with this very quiet, dignified, and unassuming young woman that he introduced as Betty Fletcher. We had a great time that night, and we had a great time the rest of the summer. They drove to Connecticut, and we drove back to Tennessee. And this occurred occasionally, most of the time, except that I think it was the next summer, at the beginning of the summer, we got an invitation to a wedding from Jim Comer and Betty Fletcher, which was held at the Harbor Inn Hotel here in Edgartown. And we had a lovely time. It was a beautiful wedding, and the facilities afterwards were awesome. And of course, they went to Connecticut and we drove back to Tennessee. But that Christmas, we received a beautiful photo Christmas card from Betty and Jim. And this went on for several years. They drive to Connecticut, we drive to Tennessee, but we'd always receive that beautiful photo Christmas card, and we have a collection of them. Then last year, after suffering some medical issues, I had some, Betty had some, and of course the pandemic occurred. She came up for just a few weeks in August, and we got together at the Black Dog on State Road because we could eat outside. We wouldn't have to be running into everybody. And we had a delightful time. As a matter of fact, a couple behind us, if you remember Jim, the family behind us came up and stopped and said, well, you all are a lovely group. And we enjoy just seeing you enjoy yourself. Well, of course, the summer ended, and they drove to Connecticut, and we drove to Tennessee. And before she left, we decided that this interim between the summer and the next summer was too long, so we would write each other. We'd have to write each other, communicate, or talk over the telephone. And during the fall, I did write her a letter, and I encouraged her and tried to lift her spirits. But I never heard from her, and my heart sank, because I knew that if she could have answered, she would have. And so I knew something was up. But Christmas came, and that beautiful photo card came. And we have that collection. And that's a memory of when I met Betty and the last time I saw him.
Thank you. I want to spend a minute or two to talk about my impressions of Betty's character. In the time that I knew her, she was always fully engaged in whatever she was doing, and she was fully in control of her emotions. She was a very dignified and level-headed person. She had a quiet persona, but she was always alert and fully involved in whatever she was doing. I never saw her angry. I never heard her say anything negative about another person. And even when the going got tough for her, she never whined, she never complained, or engaged in displays of self-pity. She was strong. She subscribed to the credo that one should always take the high road. And that credo governed her connections and her relationships to others. Betty's impeccable character and behavior was always above and beyond reproach. We will miss her. She was a dear friend. Thank you.
My name is Connie Williams, and I'm speaking for myself and for my husband, Preston. Jim, we are so pleased to be with you and among our friends as we remember dear Betty. I met Jim long ago, probably back in the 80s, when he was very much heralded for his work in New Haven. Social workers paid close attention to that work because it was so important in terms of how we treat our youth and how we understand them. We also had the pleasure of knowing Betty through Harvard and her connection to Skip Gates, the Du Bois Institute, the Alphonse Fletcher Chair. So there were many ways in which our paths crossed. Here on the Vineyard, we always saw Jim and Betty, mostly in public spaces. But in 2006, shortly after our 50th wedding anniversary, they came to dinner at our house in Chilmar. And it was a glorious occasion with 6 or 8 friends, and we enjoyed ourselves so much. We met Betty and Jim at Cousin Rose, on the Circuit Avenue getting ice cream, at the African American History Society, at celebrations at Farm Neck, and at the wonderful celebration at the Shearer Cottage. Betty was gracious. Her smile is indelibly imprinted in my memory, as that wonderful picture here shows. Just as we have remembered her here today at the museum she loved so well, we will continue to remember her. We will picture her smile, we will experience her graciousness, and remember her life of service and commitment to educational institutions and to nonprofit organizations. She is with us, she is in our hearts, we shall always remember her.
Hello, I'm Sammy Thompson. horse, Sammy Thompson. Jim, thanks to you and your family for allowing me and Janet to share a few of the many memories that we will always cherish about Betty. We met Betty nearly 20 years ago and have enjoyed spending what I refer to as quality time together at many special events and special occasions, both here on the vineyard as well as at our home in Chicago. Most recently, exactly 1 year ago, Betty and Jim joined us in discussing a host of what we think are important social, economic, and political topics during a reception at our home in honor of a prominent film producer, businessman, and policy advisor from South Africa. Janet and I will always remember Betty's beaming smile and the gracious, sincere, and welcoming personality that she displayed every single time we were able to spend time together. Janet, who was a former first grade school teacher, especially enjoyed tapping into Betty's wisdom and past experiences while comparing notes and talking with her and Jim about the education and development of young children. Perhaps the one topic that brought the widest smile and the most animated response from Betty, who, as we know, was always calm, cool, and collected, was when the topic of her family of 3 sons came up. I can recall that Betty became especially animated during one of our early conversations when she discovered that her son, Alphonse Buddy, and I knew each other and had previously worked at the same Wall Street investment banking firm a few years earlier. Without a doubt, Betty doted and cherished her family deeply. If I could say one thing to Betty, I could say one thing today, it would be this. Bravo, dear friend. Congratulations for having lived a life with a heart full of love, laughter, and sincerity. Thank you.
Amen.
We will be joined now by Ms. Shannon Sullivan, following her, then Dr. Charlene Hunter-Gall.
Good afternoon. I'm Shanta Sullivan, and I'm the daughter of Lou and Ginger Sullivan. I'm representing them today, and they're so sorry that they could not be here. Dear Jim and family, all the Sullivans extend our sincere sympathy and support at this time of remembrance and celebration of Betty's life. We have many happy memories of times with you on the vineyard. The recognition of Jim's work at Yale School of Medicine, or brunches at our vineyard home after the annual Sullivan 5K run walk to benefit Martha's Vineyard Hospital. Betty was a cheerful, wonderful, and loyal friend. Betty and Ginger enjoyed an annual ritual at the beginning of summer on the vineyard. Betty would call Ginger as soon as she set foot at Sinchikantacket. Hey, Ginger, Betty Fletcher, where and when are the parties? This ritual signaled the beginning of another season of renewal, as well as a time for making new friends. Betty enjoyed talking about her large family. She was proud of their achievements, their experiences, and their aspirations. We can just imagine Betty asking St. Peter at the pearly gates, Where and when are the parties? We miss Betty and the joy of her company, but we are comforted by our many shared memories of happy times that will always be with us. Love to you all. Lou, Ginger, and Shanta Sullivan.
Hello everybody, I'm Charlene Hunter-Gall, and I've been trying to tell people how to use this microphone. So I hope I can follow my own advice. First of all, I loved hearing the impact that Betty had on Jim. You see it now, and you've seen it for many years. But I think I may have known Jim Comer longer than any of you, because I remember trying to help him find his way around Yale, the Yale campus, when he was there to begin studying and didn't have a clue where he was supposed to go, and maybe not even what he was supposed to do. And so as I've listened to each of you today talk about the impact that Betty had on him, I am so glad, because he was, what do you say you were? He was lost, he was lost. And she found him and made him the man I continue to admire for everything he has accomplished. And now I know who helped you get there. I come to you today as one who, like most of you, all of you, have spent good times with Betty over the years. And I come today also as a PK. Now some of you black people might know what I'm talking about, but some of you black people may not. So a PK, Skip, is a preacher's kid, right? And I was a preacher's kid in the early years I spent with my grandfather, who in the African Methodist Episcopal Church was known as a presiding elder. That is, a teaching preacher. And his wife, my grandmother, well, she was the saint. But thanks to both of them, I learned early on how to process someone's passing by the words they taught me from the 23rd Psalm, spoken today so beautifully by my brother, Skip. Well, sometimes my brother, sometimes he gets on my nerves, but anyway, my brother whom I love, Skip. I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And it was during my 17 years in South Africa that I came to appreciate those words even more. For the South Africans never, ever used the word death. Instead, when someone passes, they say the person has transitioned. But they don't stop there. As I once heard Nelson Mandela explain it, in person, by the way, I was sitting next to him, just so you know, I mean, you know. But Nelson Mandela said that when a person transitions, whenever you have a problem and need some advice, you visit the grave or the urn or wherever the remains of that person who has transitioned are, the remains are, right, are. And you share your problem at the gravesite. He said he's done it. And I'm sure there are people in South Africa today who go to his gravesite and do the same thing. Because the point of that is you receive the wisdom and the guidance from the one who has transitioned. So you go and you sit and you tell them what your problem is. And so it is that Bettye Fletcher Comer has transitioned. But as we have heard today so beautifully from all of her friends, and I've heard this too from her family, her spirit lives on. And I am confident that whoever needs her advice, including you, we hear him every Sunday, but he needs advice too. But she's going to be there for whoever comes to her, including you, Jim, and wants her advice. You go wherever she is and say whatever your problem is, and you wait. And soon you will get the answer from Bettye. Yes, to be sure, Bettye Fletcher Comer will continue to inspire and be there for whoever is needed, whenever she is needed. Again, and especially to her amazing family, I'm going to borrow once again something from the South Africans. As I say, long live Bettye Fletcher Comer. Long live, but you're going to have to join me in this. Long live Bettye Fletcher Comer. Long live. Oh God, that's so boring. Can I hear something that is that respects the legacy that we've heard today? The legacy that she has left us with. I want to hear it from you. One more time, and then I'm going to sit down, because everybody's looking at me saying, when is she going to finish? Long live Bettye Fletcher Comer. Long live! You got it!
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the night, through the storm, lead me on through the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on. When my way grows dear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When the darkness appears and the night draws near and the day is past long, oh, like the river I will stand, guide my feet in precious Lord, and lead me home.
The Lord be with you. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. My friends, we have been immersed in grief in unexpected ways over the past few years. We are enduring losses of various kinds. What a blessing it is then for us to gather as family and friends and to gain strength from our celebrating and remembering the life of our beloved Bettye. Relationships, especially those of her family and friends, were important to her. As we are embraced by the atmosphere and warmth of Martha's Vineyard, and an environment that renews our spirit and is a special place to all of us, we remember and offer our gratitude for how Bettye enriched our lives by being the person she was and whom we will always remember. My family and I have wonderful memories of over the years of being with her and Jim. We lament her passing and can imagine some of the impact her loss is having upon you, her beloved family. We offer you our sympathy and availability to assist you should you wish that we do so. We hope that your memory of our presence and all that we offer here today, Comer family, be for you a source of comfort as time unfolds. My friends, sorrow without hope is a tyranny of the soul. It oppresses the human spirit's effort to find relief from its grip. Bettye was a keen observer of life. She was discerning, realistic, practical, and she was a hopeful person. Hope means different things to different people. It may be a challenge for some people to either find or sustain a sense of hope, given how they understand some of their personal experiences, or how they feel about some of the things that are going on in our world. Death of a loved one and how it reminds us of our mortality can qualify our feeling hopeful. The hope that sustains many people goes beyond those things in life that also gives them pleasure, joy, and even meaning. What offers us pleasure, joy, and meaning may fall away. In our grief of having lost these things, we may ask, what then? Where is God in all of this? There is something that all we have heard today has in common. It is the power of relationships to offer us hope. The song and music express a feeling of the ever-presence of God as a source of hope for those who believe and have faith in God. The text from Paul's letter to the ancient Greek Christian community of Thessalonica reminds them that not even death can destroy God's presence and eternal love for them. This was also Betty's faith. Her testimony of faith is a part of her legacy she has left us. The cross for Christians does not explain or take away the pain of our suffering. We see in the cross the ultimate expression of God's compassion for us. Hope reminds us that there is more grace in God than there is sin in us. Betty would readily acknowledge that not everyone believes in God or thinks of God in the same way. We all must discover for ourselves the life-giving power of hope. Hope enables us to hold on during uncertainty. It embraces insecurities and possibilities. Hope helps us to know and believe that the contradictions of life are not ultimate, as my mentor and teacher Howard Thurman used to teach. Therefore, on the other side of our suffering is healing. On the other side of our despair and sorrow is an authentic hope born out of our trials. Hope-making and hope-sustaining is what genuine relationships between people generates for them. Hope helps us to hold on when we have to let go of some dreams and expectations, and to create that space to allow for new dreams and new aspirations. Betty would encourage us in the midst of our grief and the stress it can cause us to do what the Apostle Paul wrote in Philippians. Whatsoever is true, whatsoever is honorable, whatsoever is just, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever is commendable, if there be in any excellence in these things, think about these things. Life reminds us that in a world that is chaotic and beautiful, being hopeful contributes to our overall health and living a meaningful life. Each of us gathered here today can honor Betty's life by the ways we esteem and care for one another, by reminding one another that we are not alone in what causes us anxiety or joy, to acknowledge that we all have strengths and weaknesses, to weep and celebrate life together, and by so doing along our way, have our hope renewed. And the people of the Creator said, Amen.
Again, I want to say thank you to all of you, and thank you for all of the stories and all of the feelings that you aroused in me today. And I hope that all of you took away much from this 2 hours together and the sharing that took place here. I can't tell you how important it is. And it's done everything that I hoped this program would do for me. And I hope it's done some of it for you as well. Whereas it has helped me think about what my life together with Bettye has meant. It's helped me think about Martha's Vineyard and what it has been, and how all of these stories came about because of our time here in Martha's Vineyard. They were remarkable stories, and I loved and enjoyed and thought back and remembered things that I had forgotten. And one of the stories that didn't come out because my friends Ron and Judy Davenport didn't know that they could come and got here at the last minute. But, we came to Martha's Vineyard the first time because Al Passat we were writing a book together. And he told me, you should go there because it's just wonderful to have the opportunity to walk down the beach and to see people like yourself. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I said I wanted to go to Martha's Vineyard, and I did. And the first people we met on the beach that day was Ron, Judy, and the Pittsburgh group, and the Washingtons, and the Davenports, the Haleys, and invited us whole fish after, bluefish, and began a years of friendship. That's Martha's Vineyard, and that's what Betty and others who came here did, interacted. And it's the relationships and the power of relationships, which is what all my work has been about. I've been trying to tell people that it's about relationships. That's what life is about. But at any rate, it all came flooding home to me as I listened to the stories about Betty, because it was all there. And I just I thank all of you for telling all your stories, reminding me of how important my life with Betty was, but also I learned a lot about Betty, because Betty didn't tell me a lot of these. So I just thank you for all of that. It will help me in the days and weeks and so as I deal with what it means to be without her as we go forward. But thank you again, and I want to thank a special thanks again to Donna and to Mickey for putting this all together, because this was tough in a short period of time to put it all together, and they took their vacation time, and the other friends who were involved. I just thank you all for making it happen, because to tell you the truth, I've been a dish rag for a couple months now. I couldn't have done this. I couldn't have done it without you, and I thank you. I appreciate it very much. I also want to thank the Martha's Vineyard museum staff, faculty, and I thank Reverend Streets for the contribution, who has been with me difficult and good times, and I really appreciate it. So thank you all, and I appreciate your coming, and thank you for helping me. And best wishes to you.
Thank you.
It may feel a little awkward, but let's give Jim a hug. Would you please stand? And now may the peace of God go with each and every one of you. And may all of our memories of Betty, and especially the memories that Betty's family have of her, rest and rule in your heart as a source of not only strength, but inspiration through Jesus Christ our Lord. And the people of God say, Amen. Soon and very soon.
I love Great job, baby. Good thing Preston wasn't up there in the air all day.
Thank you. I wasn't chilling. Oh,
And he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the